Hi, my name is Bill Bergman, and this is the snippet of the day today for May 27th from our recent book that I wrote with Larry Feltus, Avoid Fiscal and Economic Disaster with Ethics, Economics, and Excellence. The snippet of the day is based on some updated data for a chart that we included in the book discussing federal government debt. Debt has consequences, including the fact that you got to pay interest to pay it back. And these are the federal government's outlays on interest on debt as reported by the federal government. The dollar amounts are in billions, and you can see roughly a doubling or so of the total amount of interest from 100 billion in the early 80s to over the next 30 years to roughly 210, 20 billion after 2010. And from here in recent years, you can see a massive increase in the federal government's interest load for borrowing money. This chart again has been updated and is now we're close to $1 trillion a year just to spend money on borrowing money. Longer story short, the cost of financing the federal debt has risen sharply in recent years. It's now the third largest expense for the federal government, depending on what categories you trust. And it's ahead of defense spending. Again, you've got to be careful how you define defense spending, but borrowing money has consequences, and paying for interest is now the third largest expense category for the federal government. The Congressional Budget Office has a semi-checkered record on projecting the future, but they have to try. And under current projections, they see interest outlays doubling over the next decade, running the growth rate running about 2 times as fast as expected GDP growth. Again, predicting the future isn't easy, but you got to try in planning for the future. And the CBO expects interest expense to grow faster than the economy over the next 10 years. Why does it happen? You borrow money to fund investment in the future, and that's one healthy way to invest in the future. Sometimes you have to borrow money to do it. However, it can also be a consequence of paying for yesterday as well as tomorrow. And how much of that is now paying for yesterday is an interesting debate. Arguably, we are now paying more money for yesterday, and specifically the cost to borrow money in order to fund past deficits has risen sharply in recent years, in part because of higher interest rates. Now with interest expected to grow faster than the economy, the possible future doesn't look so pretty. We may see compound interest hitting us to an even greater degree down the road if interest is growing faster than GDP growth under current projections. Our book, and that's why we're relating this to the book, we have a lot of respect for Thomas Jefferson, a very important leader in developing what became the United States of America. Mr. Jefferson has a debatable history, but we've got a lot of respect for what he provided. And here's a snippet from him. The principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale. What the word funding meant in that context back when he said it has to do with borrowing money to pay for past debts and refinance spending that you incurred in the past ahead of what you were earning in terms of revenue and taxing people. And the key phrase is swindling futurity on a large scale is his concern. Again, he's got people that debate him on this, but it's a worthy question to think about in terms of what we're potentially doing. That's the cover for our book, and we're concerned that the debt that the government has incurred is is threatening future generations. And that's what helped inspire Larry and I to write the book. So that's it. I hope you have a good day.